let's try and look smooth. Let's try and do a show. Come on, welcome everybody. My little fade button that I built, I spent so much time working on it and it doesn't work, but it just means I get to talk over the music until I click something and it goes like this. Hi, everybody. Welcome to HalSparks Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. Patreon.com/HalSparks. If you are on Twitch, you can subscribe. If you have Amazon Prime, it doesn't cost you a dime. I'm getting that patter's pretty good. I feel like I could tighten it up a little bit, and I'm obviously going to need to. I think it's a good time, as good a time as any, to start the show off in a way that I used to. I mean, sometimes you got to go back to your roots, folks. You got to go, you dance with the one that brought you, and if you're going to slide out into somebody else's DMs, don't forget to close the drapes, and if the houses are rocking, don't come and knock it. Something along those lines. But what I would like to say is, it's an oldie but a goodie. If at any time, because Trump is going to cadaver the goddamn economy, and we're all in this together, this asshole has basically jump-started economic COVID. And if it has the impact on the economy it's going to have, and people are like, holy shit, I don't know where my next meal is coming from. I have anxiety about this stuff. I'm afraid. And you contribute to the show, or you're a Patreon subscriber, or you're a member on YouTube or whatever. I don't want you to feel a moment's hesitation to stop. Only help the show and give super chats and that kind of stuff if you can do it freely without wincing. If it causes you any concern whatsoever to contribute to the show in any format, and I mean this, take a break. Just know that I will get by. I can tighten my belt just like the rest of us in response to reality. But I want you guys to know that the whole purpose of this show is to alleviate some of that anxiety and give you some tools to deal with it and some information you're not getting elsewhere and a myriad of other things. But I am telling you that if it adds to your anxiety in any way, then it's not it's counteracting the purpose of the show. I would never want that. So just to be abundantly clear, if you can't afford to help out with the show and all that kind of stuff, I swear to God, if you can't give a super chat or be a Patreon, any of that stuff that helps the show keep going, honestly, your version of super chat is go help a neighbor during this shit, because the shit's gonna hit the fan and it's gonna be fucked up. And I just want I would rather the help no matter what. So that I mean that genuinely. I'm not, I need you to know that, because I know some people like feel, especially during times like this, they really start to that anxious feeling, and rightly so, starts to grow. So I genuinely want you to know that the show is here to add something to your life, never to take away. So if it starts to take from you because you're, then take a break, don't watch, sit it out, watch, but don't contribute. It doesn't matter. You don't have to type shit or whatever. If you want to, if you need to vent, also that's good. But again, the purpose of the whole show is to make you laugh and give you a perspective on this, and maybe take some of the anxiety of this whole situation off your shoulders a little bit, give you a little bit of space to regain some of your strength, so that when you are confronted with life's real challenges, the shit that actually needs you at your best, you are operating on all cylinders. You don't have some sort of extra, ball and chain on your leg. Does that make sense? Because I feel like the strength of diversity of thought and experience and stuff that we all bring to circumstances is only better when people aren't all puckered up, if the pucker factor doesn't overwhelm your contribution factor. Okay. Yes, it's a very scary time for people who are retired. I just saw that go by in the chat. I completely agree. And by the way, welcome, chat room. I love you guys, and I'm glad you're here. For real, though. And if you can't help, great. And I have a series of series of theories and thoughts on this stuff, as you might imagine. But we're going to jump into stuff today and look at what the response is around this tariff shit. Because in case anyone is under a rock, let's see. I'll bring up the Dow. Whoops, why is that? It went straight to downloads. That's adorable. Yeah. Yeah. So cut in this. Here you go. I mean, it's pretty clear as mud that there is no plan. The plan is chaos. And I swear to, like, at some point, some asshole on one of these shows, either from the Trump administration or on Fox Business or someplace, is going to throw around a term like organized chaos or managed chaos or whatever. They're going to put some sort of adjective on chaos to make it seem worthwhile and functional. It ain't. This motherfucker has no idea what he's talking about. Nothing at all. Yeah, this is earlier too. You're right. So this is 16. It's worse than that. That was what it was at the end of the day. 1679 and 39. It went down. Almost a 4% drop, like barely off a 4% drop. And it's not going to go up tomorrow. This ain't the dip, folks. The tariffs themselves, which he said would go into effect at midnight last night, did not. The policy went on midnight. The actual ones will start on the 5th and then the 7th. So next Tuesday and next Thursday is the expectation is that is when everything will just fucking burn. And he's not going to do anything between now and then except be on the weekend shows, walking shit back, explaining which ones aren't currently on, blah, blah, blah. Just, thank you. It is the greatest live stream in the history of live streams. That is true. What's a dollar worth today? It's under $1. And this motherfucker, fucknut, who is the devil on Trump's shoulder, whispering this bullshit in his ear. He is all in. This is, they always show, Putin's brain, that Dukin, the guy who, or Gherkin, whatever, the guy who is his like spiritual advisor when he has no spirit. I don't know how that works, but he's the one who actually gives him all of his worst ideas, in kind of a Rasputin way, just whispering it into his fucking ear. Lutnick, chuckle nuts over there, that's who's doing this with Trump. He's the guy who's going, no, it's going to work. It's going to work. And you can see it in all of his fucking interviews. He was sent out to cover for this shit. And he and Bessent, who should be the front of this conversation, if you're doing something difficult, if you're doing something, that is going to take a lot of explanation and people are not keen on it and don't quite understand it, you want to send out your Treasury Secretary and your Commerce Secretary to explain it to everybody. And both of them had different conflicting messages. And specifically at the root of all of it, and I don't know if it's hard to keep track of what the fuck they're talking about, but Lutnick's thing was this is just the base of the tariffs. It's going to go up from here. They have nowhere to go but up. These are the lowest. They're gonna this is the lowest it's going to get. And I can't give advice on stocks or whatever. I would argue that if it's a company that's going to be around in a few years after all this insanity, if it's not on the edge of falling apart, keep it and just sit back and don't touch anything. But because it's going to be a shaky time. That's what I'm doing. But I don't have a ton of stuff. I don't know if you have enormous amounts and you day trade, that's a whole different game. But Lugnuts was saying this is the floor. This is the bottom of the tariffs, and they only go up from here. Bessent was saying this is the top of the tariffs, and they only go down. So anybody who says this is a fucking plan is a lunatic. Lutnick's more accurate. Here's the thing. I don't know if either of them know. Because you know what, they might. This is the crazy part. They might both be right. They might be that this is the bottom for some of the countries that we've never really done this shit with before, and so it goes up to 5-7%, and they do a big fuck around trade thing with them, and it's a lot of angry phone calls. And then with the countries where we put this flat 10%, it'll just go away on if there are no people there again, or ultimately it's going to, the carve outs will be such that they're almost meaningless. That's what a lot of people, I think, are counting on, which will pause, the total collapse over the next like 3 fucking days. But again, these guys don't know what they're doing, and they are, this reminds me, the look on Bessent's face is the key, because he knows what the fuck's going on. Chuckle Nuts is all in on this horse shit. This is like, well, you're talking to an economic snake handler, okay? Bessent is not that guy. Bessent at least pretends to be sensible about this, but Bessent doesn't know what the fuck Trump is thinking or why he's doing it. He just knows he's doing it, and he works for him, so I've got to polish this turd every fucking day. Yeah, and Bessent is a bit freaked out. Bessent looked like he was like that Hank Paulson sweat. Remember 2008 during the Obama-McCain fight when McCain was going to pause his campaign, and the economy was collapsing, and there was this whole like fucking Baghdad Bob shit coming out of the White House under Bush that in the fall, remember? And Hank Paulson looked like that meme from Airplane where he's just sweating and sweating and sweating, right? While trying, this is great. This is so great. It's great. Bessent is starting to look like that. And let me see if I can bring him up and I'll show you. And then we'll look at the turd polishers, because these are the people who are going to be, yeah, okay. So I have that one. Let me see if I can find just the Bessent guy. Yeah, see on there. Yeah. 2 days ago, 8 hours ago, 8 hours when the part today is what matters. Yeah, here's the whole thing. I want to get the whole piece of it. Treasury Secretary urges other countries to take a deep. Yeah, here it is.
When you look at the sum total of all.
Okay, so Caitlin Collins interviews Bessent, and yeah. Let me see if we. Okay, she's outside the White House. I don't know what the fuck this set is where they are. This like, it's like they know the place is about to burst into fucking flames.
All the numbers on the chart that the president brought out in the Rose Garden earlier. The United States is about to have the highest tariff rates in the world. I saw an announcement that the president just made. I know that Bessent. Thank you.
So they have chairs fucking set up in front of the White House for this tariff horse shit. That's how big they think the story is going to be. You know how they normally see people walking around, or they catch them when they're walking down the driveway? Like we've done military strikes for the first time. I mean, there was a less organized interview process set up for when Iran fired at Israel, and we had ships there firing back and knocking them out of the fucking sky. Signal Gate is bigger than this trade bullshit. I would say they are they're great equal examples that every aspect of this government currently, the administration, is both incompetent and evil. There is a fascinating mix of stupid and belligerently wrong, egomaniacally wrong. But check this out. So Bessent is the guy that Wall Street, after they were worried about Trump and his, it's fucking tariff shit, he's going to do 20%. And then when he picked Bessent, they were like high-fiving, because that was why there was this spike in the market, because they were like, oh, he won't let him do that. Bessent will talk him out of it. They had no idea that Bessent is just a fucking bookend. So you'll see what I've watched this part of the interview. I like to watch stuff fresh with you guys. But
so much for being here. This is obviously a massive announcement that the president just made. I know there were a lot of options being considered behind the scenes, different pathways. How did the president come to this decision?
Well, look, the president's had a vision for a long time. He's been talking about tariffs. He implemented China tariffs in his first term.
He didn't, by the way, he didn't invent them, though. And he was easier on them. He wanted to do this trade deal. So he was trying to ratchet it up so he could drop them off. There's just this idiotic, like art of the deal bullshit, a book he never wrote, much less read. And so he was trying to, like, the Congress was always ratcheting this stuff up. So he was using that as leverage to drive down tariffs and sanctions so that they could get their deal, a deal they never lived up to because it was always bullshit.
So he has been thinking about this for a long time. And with the...
Yeah, not deeply. It's more like fixating on it.
Reciprocal tariffs, there are a group of factors. Is one, excuse me.
I feel very confident. Like, it's the boldness of his voice that makes me feel better about it. You can understand that, like, you'll see how Lutnick is trying the other approach, which is just if you're loud and boisterous enough, you can just steamroll everyone. He likes the Trump approach. Like, this is going to work. If you just say it louder, it'll turn a square into a wheel.
What's the other country's tariffs? As important, or sometimes more importantly, what are the non-tariff barriers? Is there currency manipulation, and is there unfair subsidy to labor or finance costs?
Yeah, and when you look at this on the reciprocal tariffs themselves.
Also, does he realize, like, the money that Trump gave to the farmers when he was negotiating that shit with China in the first place? He was taking in tariffs and taxpayer dollars and giving it to farmers to pay them off. That wasn't exactly that subsidy. Is like, you don't think fucking one of the reasons Canada has a big tariff on us because of dairy is because of government cheese. We buy a shit ton of cheese. That old government cheese, we got it when I was a kid, and powdered milk. I drank powdered milk when I was a fucking kid because we were poor. And that is a subsidy of the dairy industry. That takes their excess stock, and instead of them just throwing it out a fucking window, the government buys it, and it helps them maintain a price. That's a subsidy. That's a non-tariff barrier to that. I mean, we're certainly not going to buy cheese from Canada, even if, at an equal amount, if we have all this leftover fucking cheese. Government cheese is a subsidy of the dairy industry. They are not regulating how much they produce to the amount that's out into, in the public or the desire. It's not a balance of supply and demand by bootstrapping capitalists. The government picks up the fucking tab. All SNAP benefits go to food producers. Exactly, Groove Dragon. Exactly. All the food programs, the fucking farm bill stuff. That's what that is. That's a non-tariff trade barrier because we don't need to buy that instead of them growing less and matching the market. And therefore, if there's a push, if there's a gap to be filled. So, okay. You got 50 people and 50 units of whatever this good is, whatever we're fucking talking about. And the 50 people buy the 50 units and all the time. And then the 50 units, the 50 people, a couple of them have babies, but we're still making 50 units for a time until we manage to up production. So we're making 54 units to match the 54 human beings that are here. So we got 54 people and 50 units of whatever the shit is. So during that time, we would buy, arguably, 4 more units from somewhere else, from Canada or Europe or whatever, of whatever that is. We would buy 50, so we would have 54 to 54. So it would be even, right? If the market balanced itself out, and that's how production had to ramp up normally, but it doesn't. We have 50 people and we produce 1,600 units because they know that the government will buy 1,550 of those fucking units and put them on a shelf somewhere for a rainy day. So the Europeans or the Canadians, whoever, have no fucking chance to sell us the 4 units they would have been able to sell us because we've already oversupplied our system permanently in a bunch of areas. So the idea that other countries do this terrible thing to America is A, fucking stupid, but it's also a lie. And yes, I did cut the government cheese. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a particular, especially their kind of Velveeta, which is, it's rough. It's rough, folks. Just saying. All right. Now, so again, let me just start there. Everything he's saying about, like, they do all these terrible things on when they're not doing tariffs. We do the same fucking thing. We even, by the way, we have so much excess in some of these markets to stabilize the price for our farmers so they continue to produce. And this is big ag businesses. This isn't to help like little mom and pop fucking farmers. That we not only have government cheese and you know, rice grain and cereal grain programs that we give to poor people in the country as part of the SNAP, you know, benefits, and these kind of like care packages of leftovers stuff or excess product that we give. That's where the fucking USAID stuff is. That's why as soon as they started cutting the USAID stuff, a bunch of red state governors were like, what the fuck are you doing? That's where we sent our excess corn. Europe doesn't do high fructose corn syrup. So if you have excess corn that doesn't go into the market, they convert it into shit and sell it overseas. And they sell high fructose corn syrup overseas, but they also turn it into cornflakes and shit like that. And those food grain cereals are as part of our like food assistance because it's dry goods. So again, the idea that these terrible countries are doing this terrible thing to us because and the average American doesn't know it is A, fucking dumb, and B, a lie. And see you next Tuesday. Jesus.
How did you come up with the calculation, essentially, in terms of what this looks like for each country? Because obviously we're looking
with crayons and hammers. What do you think he's going to say? We thought about it?
Looking at the numbers here.
They took the trade deficit with every country. They divided it by the amount, you know, whatever the sheer number of their tariff on us, and they created a secondary number that has nothing to do with either. And then they put it on a fucking chart to make it look terrible.
There are different ones. And I can see some of the countries disputing some of these reciprocal tariffs, saying that's not actually what we charge. What would your response to that be?
Well, I can tell you USTR has the volumes of data, and they've been doing it.
Okay. The appeal to confusion. So yesterday, Trump holds up this fucking book that the U.S. trade representatives have a catalog, which is what it is, of the trade issues and costs and different stuff with all of the countries they monitor. And it's basically just like, okay, today we're doing fucking I don't know what main country, the UK. We'll do the UK. It's like 3 pages, and you'd go to U for United Kingdom, and you go, okay, this is their trade thing on this. This is our main trade issue with them. They have a dispute with us on this. We've had these 3 lawsuits with them over certain goods. But mainly, the only thing we have that they need more of is this. So that's what we need to talk about. It's just like, and this book's been around forever. It didn't mean fucking cadaver the goddamn economy.
Long time. So, and all this will probably be challenged in court. And I think that USTR in Trump's first administration won over 4,000 lawsuits. So I think.
Yeah, how many did they win during Obama? How many did they win during Biden? That's what the fucking thing is for. And nobody needed to fucking nuke the fucking economy to do these things. Jesus. And can I just say, I'm just going to say, as a USMCA fucking sucks. Like, NAFTA may have been bad, but USMCA is clearly worse. Clearly more damaging to the economy. Because according to them, our economy went to complete shit since that was signed.
The data is very robust.
So you expect that if there are any legal challenges that the administration would be successful on that front?
I think the data is very robust, and it's...
Yeah, that's not a yes.
Going to be difficult to challenge.
And as we're looking at this, for on China,
it will be difficult to challenge. What do you mean? Too much paperwork?
China, for example, some of the nations, there's a baseline 10% tariff, and there's a reciprocal tariff. China has this 34% tariff. There were already 20% tariffs in place on China. So is that 34% on top of that, meaning it's a 54% reciprocal tariff on China?
I believe it is.
Okay. And so
my problem isn't that it's 54%, because fuck them. And my problem isn't that it's 34%. Or that there was his awareness or lack of awareness that it was 20%. It's my problem with this motherfucker saying, I believe it is. You are the Treasury Secretary for the asshole who just announced this shit and signed an executive order on it yesterday. Is it or isn't it? See what I mean? Fuck me. Like that you should know. You should go, yes, that's what it means. Not, I believe that's what it means. Who are you waiting for the news to come from, Mr. Treasury Secretary?
When you look at that on the reciprocal tariffs, as these are going to an effect, I imagine some of these countries are going to call and try to negotiate this. Is that an option for these countries over the next few days, or...
Wait, who the fuck is that? Where's he going? Back up. So, I'm sorry, are they just giving fucking MAGA tours?
Negotiate this?
Hey,
is that an option for these countries over the next few...
Wait up, man. Hey, Charlie, what? Who left the gate open? Jesus. What, do they have Jan Sixers patrolling the White House now? What the shit? Like credentials, a badge? I don't know. I guess what after Kid Rock, I guess nobody gives a fuck what you wear at the White House anymore. Seriously.
Days, or what is the White House's mindset on that?
Well, I think the mindset is, let's just see where...
I think the mindset... Fuck me. I think the mindset... Wait up. You might... You know what, Caitlin? You might want to ask this guy, because he might know more about what the fuck is going on than the Treasury Secretary. Stop saying I think, I believe, perhaps we'll see about any of this shit, because you started a trade war, okay? You don't start a war and go, well, we'll see who wins, right? That's how you know, by the way, this isn't a trade war. This is a trade attack. This is the, it's a trade war of aggression.
Or what is the White House's mindset on that?
Well, I think the mindset is, let's just see where we are, and then we'll see how President Trump feels about all this.
Jesus Christ. Like, what the fuck? How is that a fucking answer? And again, if anybody in the Biden or Obama, fuck, if the Bush administration people gave answers like this when the stock market had cadavered 4 points in a day, you think Glenn Beck would be going, you know what, we got to be patient with these folks. They mean well and they're working hard. Get the fuck out of here. We'll see what Trump is thinking. You don't know. You're his Treasury Secretary.
Okay, so it's essentially up to President Trump if he's in the mood to negotiate with some of these countries.
Well, I mean, it's not the mood. It's the how.
Shit. Oh. God damn, this is painful.
how are we seeing things? I think the real thing is going to be, and that he's going to gauge the tariff level by, it won't be necessarily the calls from the leaders, it's going to be the calls from industry saying, okay, how can we get these off? And he's going to say, you can get it off, bring your factory to the U.S.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. Why the fuck do we want to make everything here? And, and wait a second. Wait a fucking second. Because if the whole thing about this is move your shit here, why, in that case, would those countries change their trade issues with us? Like we would, first of all, factory in Vietnam making units, 50 units made in Vietnam. And you're going to tariff the shit out of those things until they move that factory to make those widgets in the United States, where the cost of making those units will be higher than the cost of making them in Vietnam and purchasing them even with 100% tariff, because union jobs and benefits and and secondly, do we want to make every toxic fucking chemical in the world here? Are we in a trade war with China because we're mad that they're making all the precursors for fentanyl and we want to make them in fucking Idaho? Jesus, like, it's either the countries or it's the companies. And the companies can move here and sell their shit cheaply if they make it here. But how long is that going to fucking take? How long is it going to take to, like, convert a factory in Indiana that used to make T-shirts into a, I don't know, a fucking auto parts plant that makes stuff for Mercedes? How long? 6 years? Then what? By the time they're done building it, it's a completely automated factory. No factory that breaks ground right now making anything is going to look like the 1930s with a bunch of people like Lucille balling their way along the fucking assembly line, you know, putting wrappers on chocolates by hand. Motherfucker. If you're starting a factory now, it's going to run itself. There's nobody breaking ground on a fucking factory in this country in the next year that isn't planning for 90% of it to be done by automation and robots, and the other 10% will be phased out as we can, as quickly as possible. Good fucking Lord. On the upside, all these rich guys are going to lose their fucking shirt once everything goes to automation, because when the cost of labor goes to zero and you can rent a fucking, you know, third generation robot that can work 24/7, any of us can make a fucking, with a 3D printer and a robot, you can kind of make almost anything you want. So, like, how do you become a super rich person when everyone can afford robot servants? How much does a car cost when it costs zero to make, or close to zero? When a $60,000 car costs $500 worth of energy to make, what's it going to sell for? What's your bank account going to look like, rich guy? For real? Jesus. Anybody who starts building here now, it's going to be an automated factory. It's just dumb.
And obviously, with the cars, all foreign-made cars, imports are getting a 25% tariff starting at midnight. If half the cars coming into the United States are foreign-made, that's hard to turn around overnight, as you know. So what would you say to people in the auto industry who are worried about that timeline and how quickly that could shift?
Buy American.
And what about American?
Hey, asshole, Ford is an American company.
Made cars and produce cars that are being made using foreign-made parts.
Well, I believe the USMCA is exempt.
Yeah, those.
Right. But that, again, we're not talking about parts that come from Mexico or Canada, dummy. That's where the assembly plants are. Oh, my fucking God. And if they're already exempt, who negotiated that? Gee, I wonder why they were building big factories and the best ones in Mexico. Because some fuckwad negotiated that USMCA, the cars made in Mexico, would be exempt from tariffs in the first fucking place. Jesus. Oh, God. It's... I'm all right. I'm doing just fine. Shit, these guys are dumb.
That are compliant with this. Obviously, yes. Canada and Mexico are not on here. A lot of these are our closest allies, South Korea, Japan. When you look at those countries and the tariffs that they're being charged, if they're calling, what would you say to those nations who may have concerns about how to lower these numbers?
Well, I would say they've been doing it to us for a long time. Right? And if they don't like tariffs, then why do they have them?
We have tariffs too. It's not, it's either have tariffs or not. They strategically have them to preserve crucial industries. We do too. Fuck you. Good Lord. I'll tell you why. Because if they just start buying rice from the United States and they stop growing it and their rice paddies dry up, their primary, secondary food source goes away. And then if they're ever blockaded by the fucking Chinese at some point or the Russians, they're fucked. You know that shit you were saying about why we need steel here, asshole. You know that shit we were saying about why we need to produce steel for national defense? The, rice as a foodstuff for Japan, same fucking thing, dummy. Oh, God.
And should we view these as permanent?
That I think we're going to wait and see how this plays out.
And if countries retaliate, which some have said that they would, some have said they wanted to wait and see, what is the White House's response going to be to those countries?
Well, Caitlin, one of the messages that I'd like to get out tonight is everybody sit back, take a deep breath, don't immediately retaliate. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, put your hands on the fucking sink and it'll be over in a second. Just, we ran out of lube a long time ago. You'll get used to it. Lay back and take it is not a message.
Because if you retaliate, that's how we get escalation.
Because Trump's mood will sour. Also, again, tough shit. Because here's the problem. I mean, it's a good problem. I'm glad it exists. But Trump's whole myth of being a great deal maker and smart and the whole I can walk away from the table bullshit that he's always selling, the rest of the world can test that because Europeans have cars to buy. There are stuff they buy from us, but it ain't crucial. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure they'll have a hard time because KFC is not stocked in downtown Berlin with fucking gravy. I think they'll get over it. But the question is, who blinks first? And in a circumstance where whoever blinks loses catastrophically, Trump has more to lose if he doesn't blink early. Because he can collapse entire industries.
And then it becomes a full-fledged trade war, in your view?
Not a trade war. Depends on the country. But remember that...
You did it on everybody, asshole. It does not depend on the country. Jesus Christ, if like 6 countries like Vietnam and fucking, I don't know, Papua New Guinea and fucking Argentina all go, hey, anything you want, buddy. But everybody else tells us to go fuck ourselves. What the fuck do you think's going to happen? Of course, it's a trade war, stupid.
The history of trade is we are the deficit country. The deficit country has an advantage. They are the surplus countries. The surplus countries traditionally always lose any kind of a trade escalation. So I did, as a...
Sorry, because France has too much wine and cheese, they'll just eat it. They'll figure it out. What do you think? There are too many Mercedes and BMWs on the streets of Berlin? What do you mean the surplus countries, motherfucker? We're not the deficit country because there's some sort of trade and manufacturing that's imbalanced by the existence of stuff that they make in other countries that we have no interest in making here. Good Lord.
Student of economic history or a professor of economic history, I advise against it.
So you're essentially saying that they should not retaliate?
Yeah, as a student of history, in this ahistorical bullshit moment where we're all riding on the whims of a egomaniacal dipshit, look back at all the times of the past when we've had debt like this. Not since World War II have we had a debt like this. You mean COVID, which was actually more impactful on the world economy than fucking World War II was? This all boils down to us pretending that COVID didn't happen, that it was no big deal, and just la 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 la. That's what that is.
I would say that doing anything rash would be unwise.
Tell that to Trump. What are you? All right. Maybe you should have said that to him before he went out into the fucking Rose Garden yesterday, stupid.
And on the 10% of all imports across the board, that's that baseline on all countries. You know, you've said before that that tariffs should be used strategically. What is the strategy in that? What is the ultimate end game for that?
No, I said that that's one use of the tariffs. You know, go back.
Oh, and by the way, everybody, my blood pressure is just fine. I'm all right. I'm not exaggerating my my perturbitude. This is definitely authentic what you're seeing here, but believe me, I've got a handle on it. I still have good humor about this madness because, when you grow up super poor, you have a real perspective on like everything after 2 pairs of shoes is fucking gravy. And so I live that way every day of my life. So even as much as I'm like, it's really about like sort of an externalized concern for the world as opposed to, the personal kind of, which can make people keel over. Don't worry about me.
All the way to Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton used them to raise revenue. He used them to protect it.
Yeah, we had a big fucking wooden teeth and rusty knife trade deficit. Jesus.
Industry, and President Trump has added the third leg of the stool, which is strategic. So, if we are thinking about a 10% global tariff, and let's assume that we import about $3 trillion a year, so that's $300 billion, and that's a substantial revenue raiser that could then be used for working Americans on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on...
Whoa. How's this supposed to work again? Wait. You lost me.
Global tariff, and Alexander Hamilton used them to raise revenue. He used them to protect industry, and President Trump has added the third leg of the stool, which is strategic. So, if we are thinking about a 10% global tariff, and let's assume that we import about $3 trillion a year, so that's $300 billion, and that's a substantial revenue raiser that could then be used for working Americans on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and for those buying autos, they can reduce their bills because interest on American-made cars will be tax deductible. So,
or we do $3 trillion worth of imports every year. The tariffs drive up the costs of those imports and drive the number of imports down. And so the number you would take in via tariffs actually dwindles. Even if you are taking them in, it is lower. It is not enough to cover those kind of things, which Trump will do anyways, and then blow a hole in the deficit. And on top of that, as it starts to lower, a lot of those things, especially stuff from China and the things, are resold by American companies or parts of things that are made in the United States. So a tariff is applied that makes the cost of American-made goods higher. But I don't know why I'm thinking about this. I'm just a comedian. I'm somebody stupid. I don't know anything about this. I'm not the Treasury Secretary.
So this is really a working class, the tariff and tax plan.
And if the point of
plan, like he could barely say plan because his body wouldn't let him. Plan. I'm supposed to say plan right now.
This ultimately is to get people to buy more U.S. made products. But you are counting on that revenue, as we've seen some of your colleagues like Peter Navarro arguing how much money this could bring into the United States. In the end, wouldn't that theoretically dwindle over time if people are buying more U.S. and there's less money coming in from what's being imported into the United States?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's why in the past I've called tariff policy done properly is a shrinking ice cube, because what will happen, we will start out with high tariff income, but then as the factories come to the U.S., we will have more business income and we'll have more paycheck income because American workers will be earning. So, you would.
Yes, working very hard at these automated factories or building these things that were cheaper to build overseas here and adding the extra cost of American workers on top of that, making them that much more expensive. Welcome to the $7,000 iPhone.
See, it's a rebalancing. So
yeah, it'll totally happen like that, and quickly too. It's in 6 months, by the fourth quarter.
Rebalance away from tariffs to more domestic income.
But the idea that it would put a dent in the national debt then would seem not to be likely, right?
Well, not at all, because for right now, we have the income that we have, and we will be adding tariff income to that. So when
which you just said you're converting into a fucking tax cut. So you're just taking that money away and then you're giving it away to the upper 1% for this tax cut that Trump wants to do.
We get CBO scoring. The CBO scoring is not going to include any tariff income. It's not going to include any. So this is all going to be extra. So we're at this that the other T other than tariffs is tax, and from here,
tariffs are a tax.
I'll be spending most of my time on the tax deal, and we're in this strange betwixt and between on the tax deal because there will be substantial tariff.
So this is him distancing himself from the policies of Navarro and Lugnuts and Trump.
There will be substantial cost savings, and we're not going to get credit for either of those with CBO scoring.
Well, and obviously that's why you've been having a lot of conversations with Republican lawmakers. But before I get to that in a moment, we're seeing international markets start to respond to the president's announcements. Obviously, the markets in the United States are already closed. What do you expect the stock market to look like when it opens tomorrow in reaction to this?
I don't know. I don't know where it's going to trade to open tomorrow. I don't know where it's going to close tomorrow.
Okay. This might be the worst lie of the whole thing. Of course he knows. Of course he knows. And he can say, I expect it will go down, but I expect it to rebound as things recover because markets will react to extraordinary things like this. And we know this all along. But yeah. I mean, it dropped 1,000 points in futures. So, I mean, it's going to, what do we think? 38,000 before they reverse course or have a big fucking sweaty faced, round table where we're never mind
tomorrow. And, I think what's going to be important are the underlying economic fundamentals, because at the end of the day, Warren Buffett says,
yeah, what the fuck is the fundamentals on a company that can't get the supplies they need to make the shit they do here because it comes from another country, and it will be years before they can get it here. Even if they want it, they can't. But they're going to be tariffed until they do. So fuck R&D, I guess, over the next couple of years. So there goes the entire engine of the U.S. economy is innovation. It's not manufacturing.
In the short run, the market's a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine.
Well, and
right. So tomorrow they're going to vote that you suck. And then eventually they're going to tie an anchor around your neck and make you walk the fucking economic plank.
We've heard some of the allies of this White House say there will be some short-term pain for Americans. I think regular people watching may say, how do you define short-term? What does that look like for me and for my bottom line? What would you say to them?
Well, again, I think there are two things there to unpack, Caitlin. One is on what we were doing.
Also, if you'll notice, he does this thing where he uses her name twice so far in this interview, just then and then a little bit ago. And this is probably the area where he attempts, if you're looking for how Bessent became the businessman and the wealthy person he is, this is how his bullshit machine works, how he kicks his bullshit machine into overdrive when he's trying to flim-flam people and sell a bad deal as good so that he can make money off of it. It often, I would argue that if you're ever in a situation and you're having a conversation with a guy like this, or him in particular, and he says your actual name, immediately your antenna should go up and you go, man, all right, fuck this guy. Because I feel like if I was talking to you and I'm like, listen, Sam, we gotta da-da-da, like, you should be ready for a fucking sales pitch. At that point, if somebody's saying your name to you and it's not an after-school special, they're going to try and sell you a system that cleans your gutters because it's totally unsafe for you to be on a ladder, and you shouldn't have to do that. And this service will make it up for you 10 times. It pays for itself.
On government spending. So we're bringing down government jobs. We're bringing down government borrowing. So this
Also, no, they're not. They are not taking any of the quote-unquote Doge savings and giving them back. They are placing them elsewhere. They are spending them. They are spending that money on other priorities of Trump's, which is, again, what every president does when they come in and they have discretion over programs the last president put in place. The difference is because of COVID, it's a much bigger number, so it draws a lot more eyeballs.
Sustainable level of government stimulus is stopping. And then on the other side, private sector jobs and private sector borrowing will take over. Those may not be perfectly matched, but we did.
No, they won't.
See an increase of 10,000 manufacturing jobs last month. On the other side, when you think about
the manufacturing jobs were the physical building. They're construction guys for the deals made for the AI stuff, the chip fabs last year.
Especially for working Americans, could we get a price adjustment due to the tariff? Maybe, maybe not. Walmart.
Price adjustment. It's an adjustment. It's not a price hike. It's not prices going up. It's an adjustment. Who doesn't like a nice adjustment? It's sort of, think of me as your economic chiropractor, and I just stroked you out on the table.
CEO.
That sounded wrong.
Seems intent on making China, or his suppliers in China, eat all the tariffs. So Walmart, biggest retailer in America, 40 million people a week go in there. So, and then on the other side, once the tax bill gets through, then we will see the decrease for working Americans. So that's why.
Once the tax bill gets through? Sorry, you're going to blow a hole in the deficit. You're going to start that way. You're not going to reach your fucking $1 trillion cuts through Doge in any way, shape, or form. Trump isn't going to want to give that money back. He's going to want to spend it on his own priorities. And because of that, he's not going to be able to justify this fucking giant push. Like, the fucking Senate wants to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion now. You don't think Trump's immediately going to fill that up in an afternoon with quantitative easing to try and we're going to have the greatest economy in the world. Yeah, on a fucking credit card. Isn't this the shit they said Biden was doing, which he wasn't? Isn't the shit they were saying Obama was doing, which he wasn't?
Part of what I've been doing up on the Hill is pushing the House, pushing the Senate, and they don't need much pushing because I think the most undertold story in Washington these days is the level of Republican unity.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very undertold because every time they start to tell it, people start laughing. I'll get to that in a minute.
Well, on that front, and we'll see what Republicans do and how that looks. Obviously, that's the president's ambitious agenda. But on, the argument of short-term pain, long-term gain, which it seems what you're arguing about the long-term, what this will look like, prices will go up for Americans in the short term, right?
They could. They don't have to.
They will. They will. They can't not.
And that's if they don't have to, you're arguing if businesses do not pass those on to those consumers.
Well, in the President Trump's first administration, prices didn't go up, so the businesses don't have to pass them on.
Whoa. First of all, there was nowhere near this kind of trade attack on the rest of the fucking world. And he went easy on a myriad of things from China, specifically on Walmart's behalf. That's why he got so screwed on his trade deal, because all of his tariffs on China had no fucking teeth. I apologize to all of you. Chat room, I feel bad. At one point, while I don't like Bessent and I don't think he's a good person, I was under the illusion that he kind of knew what the fuck he was talking about. Now, it could be that he's just been bullied and cowed into trying to polish a turd on TV, and if he doesn't, he's fucked, which is possible. But the way he's doing it seems to me that he is missing that one part of smart where there's a line you don't cross because you will be forever remembered as the stupid person. That's out the fucking window, apparently. God damn.
Or the producers in the other countries can eat the tariffs, and traditionally the dollar adjusts. So it's a very
It adjusts. Yes, there'll be adjustments at Walmart, and the dollar will adjust.
Complicated calculus to see where we end up.
Yeah, and of course, these are much broader than the ones in the first term. The president was making the argument in the Rose Garden about what economists predicted then and what this looks like now. But on what you mentioned on what the president promised on the campaign trail, where
I like Caitlin's little jabs. She's not letting him get away with stuff. There are other people who try it, and they do these little, well, that's not exactly what happened, but we'll move on. And they do it in a way that the other person really hears it, and therefore they react, and then it carries the conversation, and then they get to double down on their bullshit, right? In this particular case, she manages to throw those things in, which I appreciate. Like, she makes the note of it without drawing the person into a fight. Now, it's Bessent, so I don't know that he's gunning for it.
Comes to no taxes on tips or Social Security.
Oh, it's a bias. My God,
do you
thank
envision this in a large way helping pay for that? Because sometimes that's a criticism from critics of this White House, saying that he's just using these tariffs to pay for the extension of those tax cuts.
Well,
which is, by the way, what Bessent just fucking said, like 2 minutes ago.
For the extension of the tax cuts or the new no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime.
All of the above. She's not making a distinction. Stop trying to pad this out.
And auto deductibility. And look, what's wrong with that? That if we take the 10% ring around the globe tariff, that if there's a currency appreciation.
Ring around the globe.
If the producers eat a portion of it, and then there's a slight price adjustment on the other.
A slight price adjustment. And that's sweet. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, here comes Bessent
Oh, hello there.
A slight price adjustment. Fucking hell.
Side, you have all four of those things happening for working Americans. At the end of the day, we could imagine that their real after-tax purchasing power has substantially increased.
And we'll see what that looks like. But on just this overall, you're coming into this. Some people say, most Americans, I feel pretty good about where the economy was when President Trump took office. We saw the stock market rally. Do you have any concerns that this announcement will put that in jeopardy for Americans?
Well,
of course not. Come on. I think we can sum up his next statement as basically.
I love layup.
Yeah.
First of all, Caitlin, I back up because, out on the campaign trail and for the previous year, I called it the steroid economy. It looks great on the outside. You're kind of big, muscular in this, but on the inside, it's killing your internal organs. And what was happening was we were heading for a financial crisis.
No, we weren't. We were coming out of one. Again, this really does all boil down to these motherfuckers not wanting to admit what COVID did to the economy, the U.S. economy and the world economy. They just want to pretend it never fucking happened. The impact of COVID on our economy, much less the world, was bigger than the impact of World War II on the economy worldwide, because it was basically just Europe and the United States throwing a bunch of money in there. There was Japan, there was other things, but there wasn't even the money to be lost in China. There wasn't even the financial sector that we have now existing in the United States at that time. Good Lord.
We were at 6.7% deficit to GDP, which we've never had when we weren't at war, weren't in a recession. And
Jesus Christ. We just came out of a worldwide pandemic. Just fucking stop. That's the problem here, Caitlin. That's the problem here, regular members of the media. Remind these fucking people that COVID blew a $20 trillion hole in the economy and we plugged it with $9 trillion. And you can't do that. And so the drag on it and the rebuilding and all that stuff was going to be on shaky ground, trying to build the pillars again as best you could. But you're going to accrue debt like that. Like, it's like saying, we haven't had a home repair cost like this since the hurricane. Right after a fucking tornado. That's what this is. He's pretending the tornado 6 weeks ago didn't happen to say this is the most money we've had to borrow to fix the house since the fucking hurricane.
No matter what, we were going to have to put the brakes on that so that
we already were. But you don't stomp them in the middle of the fucking freeway when you don't have the baby in a car seat and they're fucking crawling around the dash.
As we bring that down,
Jesus, why did it bring that down? Don't bring me down. Shit, these guys are thick. Fuck me.